Well, welcome everyone to today's Tech Talk series around how to strengthen your identity verification and anti-fraud stack. Now, a little bit of housekeeping before we dive in here. So we'll make sure to host a brief Q&A after the session today. But if you have questions throughout, you can utilize that Q&A widget at the bottom of your screen at any point to drop in your questions, and we'll make sure to address those at the end. We'll also share a recording of the session via email following today's Tech Talk. Great. So starting with a quick introduction, my name is Liam Planbeck, and I sit on the identity verification team here at Plaid, where I work with our largest clients to evaluate, build, and scale their identity verification solutions. Now, for those of you that aren't familiar, a little bit about Plaid. You probably know us as the company that provides connectivity to financial accounts. Think going to Venmo and connecting your bank account so you can send money to friends and family. While that's where we started, today we're so much more. We're a full stack onboarding platform that helps you verify a user's identity, connect financial accounts, and also activate customers. So today, we're obviously going to chat about how to think about strengthening your identity verification and anti-fraud stack. Now, Plaid identity verification can and does serve as a turnkey full KYC solution for many of our clients, especially if you're just getting started and may not have a KYC solution in place. However, I also want to acknowledge that many of you are likely coming from companies that already have sophisticated and anti-fraud solutions in place. And so today, we also want to focus on opportunities to complement and bolster your existing fraud stack. And this is something I'm thinking about on a daily basis, working with our largest strategic clients. And so I'm really excited to talk about this with you today. So let's get started. As we think about kind of the typical identity verification process, it often begins by having a user provide their core pieces of personal information, or PII. Think name, date of birth, email, phone number, address, SSN, the list can go on. Some sort of check is then being run on that user to determine whether their PII is valid and potentially generating a risk signal or a risk category for that user. Based on this information matching and that risk level, the user may then be manually reviewed or asked to provide additional documentation. This documentation then needs to be verified, often manually by an. As you can imagine, this can lead to a fragmented and really frustrating experience for the end user with long wait times. This could lead to them dropping out of the onboarding process entirely. And given the cost of acquiring new users, it's really critical to get that identity verification phase right, to strike that balance between onboarding the good users while also making sure that we still keep the bad ones out. So as we think about the importance of getting that flow right, there are tangible ways to improve your fraud verification stack across each of these main steps that you see here above. The main objective that we're optimizing for may differ based on your use case, but generally, we want to focus on thinking about how can we onboard as many good users as possible while keeping out the bad actors and the fraudsters who are trying to do harm on a given platform. For example, as we think about that first step, where you're gathering a user's PII in 6 to 9 pieces or even more, we should really be thinking about how can we create a lightweight way to get the information we need to allow those good users to onboard, while simultaneously understanding their risk. As we think about that manual review step, how can we automate the entire process to eliminate the likelihood of that user dropping out of the flow and losing them potentially forever? And lastly, we'll want to think about how can we provide those good actors with as many paths as possible to verify themselves easily while not opening ourselves up to fraud. For example, we should make sure that we're considering fallback flows to step up users where needed. So that all sounds great, but how can you actually do this and where should you focus? As we think about these areas for improvement across the identity verification funnel, there are really 3 key focus areas that we believe are important to address. The first one is assessing diverse risk signals. It's really important to be able to analyze and have access to a diverse set of signals. We all know that fraudsters continue to innovate at a rapid pace, especially as we think about AI and how that can play in the fraud space. And so it's really important that we use all the tools that we have available to keep up. Second focus area to think about is really improving that user experience. So we need to make sure that we're considering the user experience across the entirety of that identity verification flow to ultimately maximize conversion and those pass rates. And the last focus area we want to chat about is minimizing stranded users. We want to make sure we're able to automate our workflow and really have a robust solution that prevents those stranded users and minimizes their drop-off. So next, I kind of want to double click into each of these. But before we do that, I want to chat just a little bit about how we here at Plaid are thinking about identity verification and these focus areas. So what you see on this slide is Plaid's identity verification solution today. We provide multiple verification methods to ensure that you're maximizing your user's experience while minimizing those stranded users. We allow you to verify users using a database PII check, which we call Lightning, where we compare a user's data to what's on file at government-regulated databases. We also allow you to seamlessly verify users' documents, and we support over 16,000 types of documents across the world, while also pairing that with a liveness or a selfie check to ensure that the user behind the device is the same person that's on the document and the same person who's verifying their PII. We're also running a battery of fraud and risk assessments, which I'll walk through shortly, as we really strive to allow you to easily assess those diverse risk signals. We're also providing integrated AML, OFAC, and PEP watchlist screening, both on a one-time, maybe as you're onboarding those users, but also ongoing for your entire user base. And lastly, we're focused on leveraging the power of the Plaid network to help you stop repeat fraud before it impacts and hits you. So now that we've kind of walked through this at a high level, I really want to chat through those key focus areas and think through how Plaid's solution can help you address the areas that we talked about, which are, assessing those diverse risk signals, improving that user experience, and minimizing those stranded users. So let's click into the first one. So for the first one here, we're thinking about fortifying that solution with assessing those diverse risk signals and really thinking about that upstream, right? So how can we get that right view, the full view of the user before they're already onboarded onto your platform? So here at Plaid, we're analyzing hundreds of different risk signals and synthesizing these into 7 risk categories, which are displayed in these groupings here. The first bucket of risk signals are ones where we determine risk based on seeing how the user interacts with our IDV link modal, or that widget that you saw on the previous slide. We're able to fingerprint the user's device to understand the risk that's actually inherent to that device itself, such as the use of a VPN, a Tor browser, looking at how does a user's location compare to where they're verifying their address, for example. We're also able to look at that device and understand the ecosystem or network risk by looking at how often we've seen the device, both on your application, but also across the broader Plaid network. This could signify a fraudster who has stolen PII and is really attempting to extract as much possible value from it as they can. Lastly, we're able to analyze how familiar a user is with their data through our behavior risk in that top right corner. For example, is the data that the user is using, is it actually their data? Or are they copying and pasting it from an Excel spreadsheet and they're just not familiar with that data? It's not theirs. Through this risk category, we're actually able to give you a score indicating the user intent, whether they are part of a fraud ring, and whether we believe that they're a bot. Now, the second grouping of risk signals are those that we can actually analyze just from the PII, or the personal information of the user. For these, we do not have to interact with the user to run these checks. So the first two in this grouping are email and phone risk, on the bottom there. For these, we're looking at things like linked social media accounts, whether the email is deliverable. We're getting a proxy for the age of that email by analyzing data breach behavior. when that domain was registered, if it was suspicious, and the list goes on. The other risk signals that we're looking at are synthetic and stolen identity. For these, we're able to tell you the likelihood that a user is leveraging synthetic or stolen PII. And our models have been trained on millions of identities and third-party data, such as credit header files, phone carrier records, bankruptcies, and many more, to accurately assess and predict the likelihood of identity theft or manipulated identities. We're conducting checks to see if that PII is associated with a deceased individual, how many identities are associated with a given phone number and email, and whether the social security number issuance actually aligns with that user's history, among other things. Now, I know we have some existing users of our IDV solution on the line, and just want to call out actually on this slide that as of fairly recently, we're now returning those granular risk signals that I talked about via the API, like the synthetic and stolen stores, whether that email was deliverable, and the behavior risk. And so we'd really push you to think about if there are ways that you can start to leverage these risk signals that you're getting from us a level deeper as part of your verification stack. Now, these all sound great. They're fun to talk about, but I think the coolest part for me is that our clients have actually found these signals incredibly effective and to be a key part of their fraud prevention efforts. For example, one customer that I worked with in the real estate space was being targeted by a fraud ring in Atlanta. And this fraud ring was leveraging complex data and documents to try and bypass IDV. We caught them not only through our document verification, but we're also able to flag these users through our network and device risk, where we were actually able to see patterns of specific users who were trying to use different personal information, and we were able to link them together through our network risk. Another client I worked with in the financial services industry, they were seeing a mix of complex fraud, from mule fraud to first-party fraud, and actually a fraud ring attack. And we were able to take a multifaceted approach here, and something that proved really valuable for them was looking at our synthetic, stolen, and behavioral fraud flags, where we were able to actually flag the traffic that was coming from a fraud ring and bring that to their attention so that they could react and tighten their thresholds accordingly. So that's kind of the first key area. Now, the second key area we wanted to think about was improving the customer and the user experience. And I want to double click into this one around how can we think about maximizing conversion and pass rates by creating a best-in-class user experience. And here at Plaid, we think about this in kind of three main ways. The first way is we want to provide users the ability to verify themselves with the least possible friction to confirm they are who they say they are. For many clients, this means providing the ability to lead with a lightweight PII verification before requiring documents, liveness checks, and reaching out to a support, for example. However, even if you are just performing that PII verification, it's still important to make sure that you're able to gather and analyze that diverse set of risk signals to minimize fraud. Further, while leading with PII verification is great, we also want to make it easier for a user to verify their identity by reducing that manual data entry. So really thinking about how do we go from those 6 or 9 fields of PII that need to be entered and bring that down to 1 or 2. And this is something we're thinking about constantly here at Plaid, is how can we create that best-in-class user experience? Now, the first way we think about this is with what you see in the middle there, with our one-click identity verification experience, or Remember Me. With Remember Me, users are able to create a profile with Plaid that allows them to verify their identity in one click, while also making sure that we are able to run fresh identity verification checks to make sure you still have accurate and highly secure data. Lastly, the kind of third pane there is our autofill feature. And with autofill, with just a phone number and a date of birth, we're able to pull back a user's name, address, and social security number. Of course, we're still ensuring possession of that phone number, and we're running a battery of security checks on that phone to ensure that it hasn't been SIM swapped and that the device is secure. But this feature is really powerful, and we've seen it drastically reduce the time to verification and improve conversion for our clients at around 10% in absolute percentage points, which I think is pretty impactful. Now, the third focus area here that's important to think about is minimizing stranded users. And while we'd love for each and every last user to breeze through the identity verification experience, we know that that's just not the case. For these users, it's important to think about how you can ensure that they're still able to finish the flow and onboard onto your platform if they should. So first off, it's important to have a solution that really allows you to automate the entirety of the identity verification journey. You should be able to automatically handle not only analyzing a user's PII, but also the risk signals, the document verification, and the selfie check. But that said, we know that your risk appetite changes with time. And so it's really important to also be able to customize your past logic and your risk thresholds on the fly with no dev work needed. Second, it's critical to think about what happens when a user fails. For example, what happens when a user just moved and their new address isn't on file yet at those government regulated databases and they thus fail? Or what happens if they simply make a typo when they enter their birthday into your platform or into the link modal? Now, these are all things that we should be able to automate for and handle, whether it's allowing users to fall back to document verification when they don't pass the PII check, or automatically issuing them a retry if you see that they enter a typo. We want to be able to create robust and automated flows for all users. Now, the last point I want to make on kind of this area here is that not only do we want to think about building really powerful experiences for end users that allow them to verify themselves in seconds instead of hours, but we also want to make sure that your support and your ops teams are equipped to resolve any edge cases quickly. So what if there's a false positive and you feel okay moving this user forward? You should be able to do that. Or what if you just need a little bit more information to feel comfortable with this user? With the Plaid dashboard, you can manually override any failed step or ask for information via a retry link, kind of out of band, to ensure that you're leaving no user behind. So next, I want to give a demo of what exactly this could look like in the Plaid dashboard. But before we hop into the dashboard, I just wanted to show what kind of the front end experience looks like for a user with Plaid's identity verification. Now, there's a couple things I want you to keep in mind here as you look at this slide. The first thing is that there are multiple ways to reduce manual data entry with Plaid that we talked about before, whether that's with autofill, remember me, or even via different integration approaches that we can chat about a little bit later. So the second piece is that all of these different steps are really modular. So you get to pick and choose when you deploy these verification strategies, how you deploy them, and also where you launch them from within your flow. So now that you have an idea of what the solution looks like for an end user, let's actually step into the dashboard to walk through how easy this is to get started with. Now let me go ahead and share my screen. Perfect. All right, so what you see here is the kind of core Plaid dashboard. If you're using Plaid today, this should look really familiar. It's where you're able to see your secret and your keys, add new members, and customize your kind of core Plaid link flows. But what you also see is that if you're using Plaid for identity verification, just here in the left-hand side, you can toggle over to that identity verification experience. And you're able to create what we call templates. And templates allow you to customize your workflows, maybe for different user groups, or different kind of risk levels, or if you have different business units, for example. And what I want to do is kind of open up the editor here so that you can see not only how easy it is to create your first template, but also how you can adjust this all on the fly so that if you need to change your approach, you can do that with no dev work needed. Now, the first thing that you're going to see on the setup pane is really around that key focus area of improving that user experience that we talked about. So here with one click, you're able to leverage our autofill functionality. You're also able to allow users to use their Remember Me profile to make onboarding onto your platform a breeze. You can also enable AML, OFAC, and PEP screen with just the click of a button, and decide whether you want to verify a user's phone number with SMS or an OTP code. As we think about design, we want to make sure that this looks and feels how you want it to, and that it fits in with your styling. So you can choose the color of the call to action and kind of the buttons, and you can also add your own logo to really make it feel like your experience. Now, in workflow, this is where you can really think about customizing your experience for different kinds of users. And you can have multiple workflows based on different templates. You can also have different workflows for different countries. And you can decide if you just want to verify a user's PII, if you're just looking to do a lightweight verification up front, or do you want to fall back to document verification, give them the option to verify with other means if they can't verify their PII. And also you get to decide if you want to run selfie check. Also here in our dashboard, you can really go global. So we support over 37 countries with our PII or lightning verification and over 200 with other verification methods. And you can add these with simply the click of a button here if you want to do that. You're also able to decide if you want to capture users, if you want to verify a user social security number, and what kind of documents you want to let a user verify, right? Do you just want to let users verify with a driver's license and a passport? Or do you also want to let them verify with a temporary visa or an ID card, for example? Now, the last part of this template that really gives you the power to adjust your risk posture over time is our identity rules and risk rules. So on the identity rules, for each country, you get to decide what is required for a user to pass your KYC PII verification. So which pieces of a user's information that they give you needs to match with what's on file at these government regulated databases to verify that user for that part of the flow. And then in risk rules, across our 7 different risk categories that we talked about earlier, what's your acceptable risk threshold here? So, if you set medium, any user that's marked as a high risk will then fail on that risk check. But not only are you able to set and adjust these here, we're also giving you, like I said, that granular risk information via the API so that you can create more complex decisioning logic if that's something that you're looking for. All right, so that's the template setup. You can always publish new changes and kind of, we have version control over time. I'm going to leave these changes for now. But what I want to double click into is what actually happens when a user verifies. So you're able to see the different statuses here. And let me click into one of these past sessions. Obviously, this is all in sandbox data, as you can see on the top. But what you're able to see here, even from the sandbox session, is that Leslie Nope was able to verify herself using our autofill feature. So name, address, SSN were all pulled back just based on that phone and date of birth. We're also able to see here that we skipped document verification because we were able to verify this user with just lightning verification. Now, that's great, but what if that's not the case? So what we're able to see here is a little bit more complex. In this case, Leslie Nope had to verify her SMS code in 2 attempts, which is interesting. We'll also notice that the address doesn't match, which led to a failure on this lightning verification. And so you'll see, maybe this is a new address, or maybe she entered an older address, and we want to give her a chance to still verify. So what you'll see here is that we fell back to lightning verification, and Leslie was able to upload a document. You'll see that we were able to extract her name, her date of birth, the document number, and these are all things we're returning via the API. But not only are we just extracting this data, we're also running some pretty interesting fraud analyses on this document. So for example, does the name and date of birth on this document match with the information we verified in the previous step? Is the document an actual physical document as opposed to a photo of a photo or a photo of a computer screen, which we see actually fairly often? And does the document layout match what we would expect from this jurisdiction? We're also making sure that the document hasn't been tampered with and that it's not expired. Now, the last part here that we show is these risk signals. So really that first key area of making sure that you're able to analyze diverse risk signals. So we're able to return this for all these users. And what you'll see here that's interesting is this network risk is being flagged as high risk. Now, why might that be? Well, it looks like my device has created over 190 sessions, which is a little suspicious. And also 23 sessions in the last 3 months, 8 sessions in the last 7 days. And so what we let you do is can kind of explore that to understand, is this suspicious or is the user just confused? And so you can click over here to kind of analyze a web of related sessions, both based on a user's device and also by an IP address. And this is actually pretty powerful. This is how that one of my customers identified that fraud ring was they were seeing the same person with the same device try to use different PII at different times in their flow. So this can be a powerful tool as well. Now, what happens if a user isn't able to get through? As we talked about, we don't want to leave them stranded. So in this case, it looks like there was some issue with the name. Leslie got a little confused with her first name. The date of birth isn't quite correct. The address isn't correct either, but we still fell back to document verification. In this case, Leslie tried to upload her document, but on the document, we're seeing that her birthday is in 1975 and extracting her name. And we're noticing that this name and date of birth are actually not matching with what we have on file here as part of the PII verification. And so there's kind of a few different ways that you can resolve this. The first one is if you just want to give Leslie another try to go through this and you just need a little bit more information, you're able to request a retry here. And you can do this via the dashboard. So if an ops team comes in here and needs to get more information, or you can also set this up programmatically. So you can have Leslie redo everything from the beginning. You can just redo the failed steps, or you can customize it and choose which parts of the flow you want to run. The other part is that if you're looking at a session and you say, actually, this just feels like a big mistake, I feel comfortable with this user, you're able to override a given step and override that to a pass. And through that process, we'll keep note that it was manually approved. And that will then change the overall status to a pass, which will then inform you via the backend and allow you to progress that user through your flow. The last thing that I want to call out is that, if there's ever that need to kind of ask for additional information out of band, you don't necessarily need to do any UI work on your own side. So you can just create a retry here and can generate a link to send to that user via text or email, which will allow them to verify themselves and pull back that information here. So glad we got to walk through that demo a little bit. Want to wrap up by just walking through kind of a few additional things to think about. So want to chat next about, at a high level, how can Plaid actually fit into your solution? So some of you may be looking to implement identity verification solutions for the first time, and that's great. We can be your one-stop shop. But I also want to recognize that many of you likely already have identity verification solutions in place that you have optimized over time, and that's great too. With Plaid IDV, we have multiple integration options available at varying degrees of technical lift that really allow you to focus on what's most important to you in your stack. So the first integration option would be what you see on the left there. This is our fully integrated solution, leveraging our iframe as part of your flow. Here, IDV acts as a turnkey system with our fully managed integration. You can use this battle-tested, conversion-optimized UI straight out of the box. This is launched also using the same mechanism as the core Plaid banking solution is today. So if you're already using that, then your lift should really be minimal. Through this flow, you're still able to customize the look and feel, as well as the workflow for how you'd want to verify users. However, what if you already have some of those data fields and you're looking to verify your user and minimize your impact to your own UI? So that's great. And that's where the second option, our hybrid flow, comes in. In this flow, you're able to pre-pass to us any user data that you already have via our identity verification create endpoint. Then you'll launch link the same way as in step one, but the user won't be prompted to re-enter their data. Now, lastly, if you have all the data you need to verify and you have a user's consent, you can leverage the third option, which is actually a fully backend flow with no user interaction required. This would allow you to verify a user's PII and risk signals via API. But keep in mind here that if you're trying to verify documents or selfie, you'd still want to use our link model for that. Now, how could you actually leverage this information to strengthen your identity verification stack? Well, ultimately, this is really going to depend on what you care about most. But most of the successful areas that we've seen clients deploy Plaid IDV as a complement to their existing solution and kind of mere hours to days has been three main areas. So the first one has focused on that key area of assessing diverse risk checks. What we've seen here is clients make simply a backend API call to verify a user's PII and analyze the risk signals associated to that user. This can help get a full picture of the user without any changes needed to your flow. With the second area is really around improving the user experience. We've seen clients leverage our autofill and remember me functionality to minimize data entry. What you could even do here is pass this on the back end, a user's date of birth and a phone number, and then launch Link to verify their phone number with an OTP code. And we'd then be able to pull back their name, address, SSN, and verify that user. And for some clients, we've seen this flow convert at as high as 97% with a client that tested this. Now, the last area we've seen be successful is on that third key focus area, or minimizing those stranded users. What we've seen clients do here is leverage those shareable links that I showed in the dashboard. So with this let our client capture users who failed their initial KYC experience or were stuck in manual review. Via the Plaid dashboard, you can programmatically generate a Plaid hosted link to send to a user, which allows them to verify. What this means is no front-end integration work on your side at all, while still being able to capture hundreds of lost users. With one Plaid client who did this, they were actually able to capture 74% of users that previously failed their KYC flow. So while today we've largely focused on identity verification and fraud at the user level, here at Plaid, we're really focused on thinking about holistic fraud across an entire user's journey. To that end, not only are you able to analyze user level risk with identity verification and monitor, as we walked through today, but you're actually able to get that full picture of a user's risk. You can do this by tying your analysis of that user level risk to the account and pulling that identity information from the financial institution that the user connects with Plaid and cross-referencing it to the information that the user verified upfront with you at the user level. You're then also able to analyze later in the flow the transaction level risk by using our product signal to ensure that a transaction will actually go through and reduce that ACH return risk that can be really painful. And lastly, you're able to analyze network and ecosystem risk with some of our newer products like Beacon, which allows you to assess the risk of repeat fraud at that user level before that fraudster is able to hurt you. So we really want to make sure that you feel as secure as possible across all of your interactions with a given user. So with that said, I'd actually love to open it up for a little bit for some Q&A. So feel free to use the Q&A widget that I mentioned at the bottom of the screen. And we can use that to kind of go through some of those questions. I'll give people a second to type in any questions and then we can start going from there. Perfect. Great. So one question I see here is whether the financial account matching feature is enabled by default when a user links their bank account after completing an IDV session. And for anyone that's wondering, so financial account matching, that's where this kind of user to account risk ties in that we talked about. So you're able to analyze the user that verified with the information on file at their financial institution. And so as long as you check that box in your IDV template, and then you call and actually get their identity information, this will be enabled by default. So you'll be able then to see this information directly in that Plaid dashboard at that user level record to tie all of that information together. If you want to also handle that programmatically via API, you'll probably want to think about our identity match endpoint, which actually returns the scores of that match programmatically. But kind of pairing the two makes for a really nice way to visualize it and then also action on it via API. Great. So next question I see here is the solution only for the digital experience or can it be used in a physical branch as well? This is a great question. And we've actually seen clients deploy this in a physical branch in a variety of use cases, whether that's in leasing offices for kind of self-show tours or other use cases as well. And there's kind of a few different ways that you can think about this. The first one would be leveraging are shareable links. So when someone comes in, you could have a way to deliver them a link where they could then verify their identity on their own device. The other way we've seen this work is, if you have a QR code, for example, that a user can then scan and take them to, let's say, a website where they can then launch this experience from. So there are definitely ways to think about this within a branch, and we'd be happy to kind of walk through some of that as well. I see a question here as well on whether Plaid facilitates OFAC checks. So we do. We didn't spend as much time walking through that today. And that's tied into our monitor product. So with our monitor product, you're able to screen users both one time when they onboard, as well as ongoing going forward. And we offer a variety of OFAC, international sanctions lists, PEP screening, and you get to configure which lists you want to screen users with, in addition to, if you want to do that ongoing. And the cool part is that you can then just check a button in the template and it'll actually link it so that when a user verifies their identity, you're also simultaneously screening them through whatever configuration you have on OFAC or PEP screening. All right, I see a question around pending review and explaining that pending review status. So that's a good question. The pending review on Plaid will only ever happen if you get a kind of OFAC, AML, or watch list hit. So if you're screening using our monitor program for users that are being verified and one of them gets a hit, that's when that user would be put into a pending review state so that we can give your team a chance to review that and determine whether you feel good doing business with this user or whether you should actually block them as a result of that OFAC hit. All right. Looking through here. So another question around financial account matching. So for financial account matching, are you able to verify the owner? Oh, it disappeared. Are you able to verify the owner name of the bank account, i.e. the bank account indeed belongs to XYZ? If yes, does this require applicants choose bank account login via Plaid? So this financial account matching feature that we talked through a little bit does rely on us being able to kind of view that user journey, right? So in this case, a user would verify using Plaid IDV. They would then verify their bank account with your application using Plaid. And you can then use that connection for whatever use case you have, whether that's account authentication, pulling an asset report, whatever that might be. And that will then verify that, yes, that bank account indeed belongs to a given person, as we're able to pull the name on file at that financial institution. All right. Let me look through here. We got a bunch of great questions. All right. Next one, have a question on autofill availability, whether that's just in the US. The answer to that one is yes. As of now, that autofill feature, we're only able to verify users who are in the US and with a US phone number. Let me see here. There's a question here as well around with the full stack of verifications that are done, so that diverse risk signals that we talked about, whether you just need to have an agreement with Plaid or you have to work with other providers. That's the great part, that we really think is kind of a value add is you're just working with us, right? So you just contract with Plaid to leverage our identity verification solution, and you're able to access all of the risk signals that we provide and that we showed both in the dashboard and chatted about as well. There's a question here on whether we're able to verify TIN numbers in addition to SSNs. The answer to this one is yes. So we support ITIN and ATIN verification in the US in addition to that SSN number. All right. Have a question here around within the dashboard, are there different levels of permissioning based on login credentials? So as of now, there's kind of an all or nothing approach to identity verification. But the great news here is that actually within this month, you might see that on the dashboard, we just released more granular permissions for kind of many of the Plaid experiences. And the great news is that within the next few weeks, we're actually going to be rolling out more granular permissions for identity verification as well. So for example, being able to limit who's able to see data, who's able to edit your templates, and that kind of granularity around that. Let's see here. So there's a couple questions on pricing. And I think the best way to think about this is really pricing for the checks that you use. So if you're just verifying a user's PII, that's going to be one associated fee. Whereas if you're then looking to verify document and selfie, each of those have an associated fee as well. I think obviously the best way to kind of get into more granularity around that will definitely be dependent on your use case and kind of working with our team to think through the best options that you have there. But at a high level, yes, based on your use case and how you're looking to verify a user, the pricing will inherently be slightly different. All right. Let's grab maybe one or two more here. Let me see. So I see a question here on marking a customer as fraud and IDV. What does that do with Beacon if you have it enabled? So Beacon, as a reminder, is our kind of network product that lets you understand the risk of a user across the entirety of the Plaid network. And as of right now, we're kind of releasing it in phases, but very shortly, if you mark a user as fraud and IDV and you're using Beacon, then that will directly flow to Beacon. So you're able to kind of keep track of any previous known fraudsters that you've seen before across your stack. And so really being able to kind of flow from identity verification to Beacon while also kind of monitoring on the AML side as well. All right. Let's do one more here. I think there's some questions around Cognito and Plaid and moving from Cognito to Plaid and differences. I would say like the best way to answer this one is probably going to be with your account manager. So I think it's really going to be dependent on what exactly you're using from Cognito's kind of existing set of solutions and how we're thinking about that at Plaid. So I would recommend having that conversation with them to think about if it makes sense to make the jump. And we can really help you think through how to make that a seamless transition. But I will say we're always thinking about making the Plaid solution more robust. And so I do think that there are inherently going to be benefits of being on kind of the Plaid suite of solutions over time as well. All right. So we have a bunch of questions. I don't think we're going to be able to get to all of them because kind of a couple of wrap-up slides we want to run through here quickly. So we're going to make sure to kind of make note of all the questions that we didn't get to, and we'll go from there. But really appreciate all of the great questions. So as we wrap up, just want to start by saying thank you. Thanks for spending your Wednesday with us. Identity and fraud can be extremely messy. And so that's why we're here to partner with you and help you improve your verification process. No matter which of the three kind of key focus areas are most important for your business, we're excited to help. Since we launched our identity verification solution last year, we've been helping hundreds of companies grow while strengthening their risk posture. And one of the benefits of partnering with Plaid is our expansive network and reach across the entire digital financial ecosystem. We're proud to work with thousands of financial institutions and power some of the leading fintech applications today. Our network enables us to provide differentiated product experiences to you and your end users. We provide the fastest, nearly one-click experience on the market, helping to deliver conversion gains without increased fraud. Plus, you get unrivaled risk signals thanks to the power of that Plaid network. And again, not just at that user identity level that we talked about, but also across your entire customer journey at that financial account, transaction, and network level. And you're able to assess more risk signals than point-in-time ID verification providers. Since last year, we've really been helping our customers increase their pass rates by as much as 50%, lower fraud on their platform, and improve their internal compliance and support operations, saving hundreds of hours on manual reviews. Our product team is constantly investing in ways to ensure IDV is the most effective and highest converting verification and anti-fraud product in the market. And we're excited about the various ways that we can help you in the identity verification space to create those high quality experiences for your end users while also fortifying your fraud solutions. So with that, we look forward to thinking about how we can help you kind of address any of these key areas that we chatted about today, whether that's assessing diverse risk signals, improving that customer user experience, and making sure that we're minimizing those stranded, failed users throughout the journey. So with that, in terms of next steps, feel free to reach out to our team. You can reach out directly to myself if you'd like, your existing account manager, or through the dashboard if you want to learn more or chat further about any of the topics that we walked through today. And again, a big thank you for your time and for joining today. Last call out, that quick start demo number 3 can be really helpful as well, especially maybe for like a technical team that wants to look through things a little bit. So would definitely check that out as well. And with that, we'll wrap up. There's my email. If you want to reach out to me directly, always happy to hear from you. And thanks again.